Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, and if you're new to this series, we built this 5-acre pond over the past year, and it took us several months to get all of the dirt excavated, and we had to bring in several truckloads of clay, and we also built an island, a dock, and got all the structure in place, and then it took a couple of months to get it full of water. After that, we stocked it with a bunch of bait fish, including bluegills and threadfin shad, and not long after that, we stocked it with these little 2-inch aggressive bass. And we're going to be giving you an update on them here in just a minute and showing you how big they've gotten. And I put some underwater cameras in the pond this week and captured a school of bass, and some of them have gotten really big. They've grown a bunch since they were 2 inches. It's a nice day out here at the pond, and today I'm going to be deploying a fleet of RC ducks and alligators to spy on all the different critters out here at the pond. And I got a variety of different remote control boats. Some of them will go a little faster than others. But we're going to rig every one of them up with a camera. Some of them are going to have the GoPro style cameras mounted on the back. Others are going to be a little more incognito with hidden cameras on the inside of the decoy. And just in case those pesky blue herons come back, we've got the gators. I got a couple of different realistic looking alligators. I have a feeling this is going to be a ton of fun, and we should get to capture some of the wildlife in their natural element. But speaking of wildlife, I want to show you one of the biggest personalities, and that is a duck that just made the pond his new home. And he's been a lot of fun to watch, but one of the unique things about him is he is determined to live in this pond. So most of you that have followed the pond series know how many predators we have, with coyotes, hawks, but one of the biggest threats to this duck is the group of owls that live here at the pond. So take a look as I've captured some pretty wild footage of the owls trying to attack the duck at night. But the thing I love the most about it is after each attack, the duck rises up out of the water, flaps his wings, basically saying that he's not afraid of the owls and he's here to stay. Gotta be the bravest duck I've ever seen. But the owls basically harassed him over the course of a few nights, and he was able to dodge every attack. And now I see why they call them ducks, because whenever they're attacked, they duck up underwater and live to see another day. But this one in particular is a really friendly duck. Anytime any other wildlife shows up to the pond, he swims over to greet them. He likes hanging out with cats, crows, basically anything that moves and isn't trying to attack him, he wants to be friends. So the first thing I needed to do was test out some of these RC boats, and they have pretty accurate controls. The next thing I needed to do is test out the range and see how far I was going to be able to drive with each of them. And this one in particular made it around the oak throne, which should be plenty of distance. Next up, Mr. Alligator, and I don't plan on having to use him unless some of those fish-eating birds come around the pond, but he'll be ready when we need him. Alright, so we got our hen decoy here, and basically I'm just going to cut out the bottom. I'm going to take one of the RC boats and draw an outline over the bottom of it. Just cut out that section real snug. Alright, I think it worked out perfect. This boat has 2 hooks on the back of it that'll slide right in there. That gives it a nice snug fit and keeps those propellers in the water. Alright, now it's time to install the camera. I wanted to go with something a little smaller than a GoPro, so I got this DJI. Cut out a little hole there in the front. We're probably just going to install it with some duct tape. So for the second decoy, I used a different method. I took the top half of the boat off and just used screws to attach it to the bottom of the decoy without having to cut a hole in the decoy. And we put a GoPro on the back of this one, so we'll have a real-life duck's eye view. Now the last step is to give them a float test, and it's a little bit heavy on the back end, but I think it's good to go. And right on cue, the mallard drake and another friend of his flew into the pond, so let the games begin. So I wanted to go ahead and put out a couple of different ducks and have them sitting at different positions in the pond. And then next up I wanted to test the waters. I wanted to ease up to the ducks, but they are wild ducks, so one mistake and they could fly away. So at first I didn't want to get too close. But unfortunately today, Mr. Romeo the duck had already done his stretches and impressed the ladies and drawn this female duck in. So I knew that it was going to be hard to get him to leave that duck. So even with our best attempts from the mallard hen, it wasn't enough to get his attention and bring him over. So the obvious next thing to do was to bring out the mallard drake, and it's time to see if Romeo gets protective, and we might see a duck fight. So I started getting a little bit closer to him, and you can see he's being a little protective. The female's on the back side of him. But even after getting up close, Romeo didn't seem to mind. he's a pretty laid back and chill duck. So I knew it was time to swap up the game plan, and I decided rather than following them around the pond, I'd bring all the decoys to a local hangout right in the middle of the pond and just wait on the ducks to join up. And this plan worked out perfect. Romeo had to come over and start showing off all of his talents in front of the new hens. And we also had the other wild female duck show up. I'm not 100% sure what type of duck it is, so maybe some of you can leave a comment down below and let us know. So they both finally warmed up to the decoys, and I was able to get several close-up shots, which I'm pretty impressed with for day one of the spy decoys. But after a long day on the pond, it was time for Romeo and his partner to get a little bit of sleep before the night shift comes, where they have to be on their toes at all times. And now it's time for the daily cooking segment, and Liz got me a black stone griddle for my birthday, so we're going to cook some seafood on it. And this video is brought to you by Kamikoto knives. We've been using these knives since we started the pond build, and I'm still extremely impressed with them. They're made out of high quality Japanese steel, and they always have a very sharp edge. And we're going to start out with some vegetables and add a little bit of lemon juice. And before we add the seafood, I melted a stick of butter, and I'm going to add this minced garlic in it. And then we'll put a little more butter and garlic down on the grill for the shrimp, and our favorite seasoning, which is Tony's. And then cover them up. And then for the lobster tails, just use a pair of scissors, cut it right down the center, and then pull that lobster meat out, and it sits right on top of it perfectly. And while those are cooking on the grill, we want to add some nice thick layers of that garlic butter. But the Kamikoto knives come in several different sets, but our favorite is probably the Kanpeki. It seems to be perfect for our needs. It comes with a 7-inch vegetable knife, a 8.5-inch slicing knife, and a 5-inch utility knife. But don't just take it from me. These knives are used by Michelin star chefs all across the world. And they also come in this nice wooden box, which makes it perfect for a gift. So if you're interested in checking them out, I'll put a link down in the video description that'll give you $50 off a knife set. So I did some underwater filming in the pond this week, and I found the mega lode of bass. It's where all of the fish seem to be hanging out, and one of the last places I thought to look on the pond. And it's right here where this red arrow is. So it's between the island and the standpipe on the pond. And I guess now that I think about it, it makes a little bit more sense that that's one of those areas that's got structure underwater, and it also gives the bass easy access to deep or shallow water. And I cannot believe when I was watching some of this footage at how many fish were down there. Not just the bass, a lot of bluegills were hanging out in the area as well. And it's not too rare to see big schools of fish like this in the fall and winter. They're definitely going to break up in the springtime whenever the spawning season comes around. But the one thing I was blown away by is how big some of these bass have gotten. So I knew there were some big females in the pond, but I've been catching a lot of fish in the 1/2 pound to 3/4 pound range, and a lot of males. But you can see that a lot of the bigger females were out here deeper, and I'm 100% confident that several of these bass are over 1 pound, which means they've already grown over 10 inches and gained 1 pound in just 5 months, which is great growth rates. Anytime you see a bass growing an average of 2 pounds per year, that's kind of that target goal area. And it lets you know the habitat and water is in good condition, and you got plenty of forage fish for them. But we are going to do one other test to see the pond quality in the spring and perform what they call an electroshock. And they basically have a boat that'll drive around the pond to the brush piles, and they'll shock the fish, and they're basically just putting a small amount of current in the water, and it's just enough to make the fish come up to the surface, and they'll use a dip net, scoop them out of the water, take some measurements, and then put them back. And you can get a ton of information from this, and it'll let you know how the overall population of fish are doing, as well as all the bait fish, and they'll give you their recommendations on if you need to add anything that year. So we'll be seeing that this spring after the spawn. Alright, it's time for another fish tagging session. We got the pit tag scanner here. We're going to measure their length, and if it's over 1 pound, or if I think it's close, I'm going to go ahead and weigh it, because that would be one of the first contest winners. But we're just going to be out here trying some little small lizards today. Let's go see what'll bite. Here's one. Got him. What we got here? You're running straight at the dot. Oh yeah. Nice one. All right, 11.5 inches. This one is 0971. I'm getting closer to a pound. All right, here we go. Got him. Out there off a little deep drop off. Biggest one of the day. We're getting closer to a pound. 12, almost 12.5 inches. That's a nice one. Look at that big belly. Scan her to make sure she hasn't been caught. All right, this one is 148. All right, we're gonna weigh her real quick before we let her go. She is 3/4 of a pound. But that's a nice female. Go ahead and get her back. She's headed back out there deep. The hook throw seems to be the hot spot. All right, 11 inches long. This little guy is 0913. Got a little belly on him. All right, now it's time to check in on the 5-acre pond mascot that we call Tiger. Let's do the finger test. Yep, he's got Moby in him. Let's feed him some shiners. All right, now it's time to watch some of the bluegill feedings, and right on cue, it's like Romeo knows whenever the cameras are rolling. But look who else decides to show up to the bluegill feedings. This is a juvenile bald eagle that's been hanging around the pond lately, and now he's starting to understand that he can probably get an easy meal during the bluegill feeding. So we had a couple of bald eagles stop by in the past, and this is a juvenile that just flew into the pond, and early in a juvenile's life they'll have a brown head, but as time goes on you'll start seeing those colors change to white. And you can already start seeing some of that coming in now. But the one thing I was interested to see, I know that Romeo can fend off the owls, but I'm not sure he's going to be so lucky if the eagle decides he wants a duck snack. But I have to hand it to Romeo. He's a brave duck because he hangs out right there in the middle of the pond, even though he knows the eagle's looking right at him. And I really do think every now and again he taunts him. There's a little shot of a bass busting in the background. But so far, the young eagle has just been after the fish. And you can't show the wildlife clips without showing the possum that we call George Jones. And I really do think he's starting to get old and lose some of his vision. Because you'll see here, he almost walks directly up to the deer. Doesn't seem to faze the deer though. And here's another clip where you got the young fawns, a nice buck, and then Romeo in the background. And a coyote or something seems to startle them all. And it is nice to see the young deer starting to gain his deer senses. And he knows it's time to get out of there. So while we watch this night lap footage, I want to talk about a project that I've got coming up early this next year. So I want to build a bait pond, and that's pretty common with largemouth bass ponds because they consume so much forage fish throughout the year. And you can build a bait pond that's typically uphill of the bass pond, And you can grow different type of forage species like shad, or I've even seen people put trout in them. But I've been doing a lot of research about this one particular bait that I'm not going to name just yet, but it's in the same family as the crawfish. And as most of you know, we had to haul a ton of clay in to build the pond, and I can't put the crawfish in there because they would burrow holes through the dam and create a bunch of small leaks. But I've done a lot of research, and this new forage does not burrow, so I'm pretty excited about that and hope to get started on the bait pond right after the new year. But since we have a new year coming up, I'd love to hear your feedback on what type of projects you'd like to see either out here at the pond or new projects out here at the farm. So leave me some good ideas in the comment section down below. And there goes Romeo and his new girlfriend on this nice foggy morning. And a quick update on some of our young ducks that just hatched a few weeks ago. They're growing really fast. Sarah's basically been their mom and taking care of them. We put them in a pool for the first time to see if they wanted to do any swimming, and they didn't want any part of it. But they'll be warming up to it here soon, hopefully, and then going into the pond shortly after that. And now it's time to feed Mr. Moby. So if you enjoyed the Duck Decoy series, leave us a comment below and let us know other things you'd like to see us film with them. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can follow along with the 5-acre pond and all of the wildlife that's made the pond their new home. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and we will see you all next time.